Hi everybody, my name is Frida and I'm going to be sharing my testimony of how I came to Jesus, but first I'm going to share about my past. So it starts with me being born in Israel, November 9th, 1969, in a small town named Haifa, Israel. My mom had come to Israel from Poland, and that's because her father, my grandfather, had an economic opportunity, and she had also talked about how much anti-Semitism was present and prevalent there in Poland. It is a Catholic country, but they hated the Jews, and she said that she was taunted and mocked, called a dirty Jew. They would hang banners and tell people, like, say, dirty Jews, go back to where you came from. So I think that made a really huge impact on her and really turned her off to Christianity, actually. We can get to that later. And then my dad came to Israel because he was very good at speaking different languages, and he was like a genius with machinery. So he was asked to come there to do a specific job. And first, my dad and my aunt, my mom's sister, dated, but that didn't work out. My aunt is very feisty, and I can't imagine my father being with anybody who has a sense of self to that degree. So they met, I believe, in a kibbutz, or they had similar friends. They had a similar friend group, and apparently my father was like crazy about my mother at first. And my mother thought that he was this fantastic guy because she saw how he treated his mother, and she had always heard that the way your husband will treat you is the way he treats his mother. Like, he used to help her a lot, be at her beck and call. But soon we will find out that my father was not who he was perceived to be. So one of the things that she had told me is that when she was pregnant with me, she went to go food shopping and hang out with her mother-in-law, and she came home late, and she's knocking on the door, and he basically locked her out. So she's outside of the apartment with all the groceries and pregnant, and all she was doing was trying to provide food for the family and hang out with his own mother. There was another story my mom told me where she made soup and it was too salty, and he literally like stopped talking to her for a week. Like, really ridiculous things. So it turns out he was a controlling narcissist and abusive. Another thing that he had done is, when she was pregnant with me, like, all her friends were also pregnant, so they would take walks in Israel in the warm weather with their husbands, and my father was never present. So he wouldn't come for whatever reason. He was very antisocial. I don't believe he had a lot of friends. He even told me one time that he had no friends. So my father actually passed away from cancer, and I have had a very difficult relationship with my father that I will get into in a little bit. So apparently when I was in Israel, I have blonde hair and blue eyes, and that was very rare. So everybody tried to like touch me and hug me, and I would just swat their hands away, and I feel like I'm still a little bit like that, like, everybody get away from me. I didn't welcome the affection. I'm also going to be reading off of some of my notes, so that's why I'm looking down. So we stayed in Israel for 2 years, and another economic opportunity presented itself in the United States for my grandfather. So my mom and dad and grandparents moved to the United States, and the first place we lived was in Jamaica, Queens. And I remember just having like a beautiful sheltered life with my mother, but I cannot dredge up any memory of my father during this time when I was like a toddler at all. I remember having this huge Raggedy Ann doll that I loved. I remember jumping up and down on the bed. But my first, I guess, experience with abandonment and rejection is a huge part of my story. And I kind of wonder if when you're in the womb, if there are spirits of abandonment there, like just the way my father abandon my mother essentially? Did that go into my psyche because I was in her womb? I'm not sure. I don't know what the research is on that, but so the first traumatic experience was when I went to kindergarten, and everybody's had this experience where your parent has to leave you there. So I remember just like flipping out, crying, and just it being so hard. I could not believe my mother was walking away from me. But obviously I did get over it. And I was an only child, and then my brother was born, and I was not happy about that. I remember trying to literally poke his eyes out while he was sleeping. They had to put a lock on the door because I was just like ready to kill him, because now all the attention that I had was shared. So, and another thing is I didn't speak English. So when I went to school, I couldn't really communicate with anybody. And I remember even starting from a young age, always being fixated on like girls to be my friends that had to be like beautiful. And I always thought everybody was prettier than me. I always compared, it was so strange because I was young, but I compared myself to other girls and I always came up short. And my father was very critical. He used to say like the worst things about people. And I guess that sort of penetrated into my head that you had to be physically attractive in order to have value. You know, later on in my parents' marriage, he was very abusive towards my mom, verbally abusive, and used to tell her she's fat. She had a slow metabolism, but she was never fat. And even so, like he would just say awful things to her. And so let's do second part.